This video is made specifically to briefly introduce this precast plant and thereafter to present the manufacturing process of the precast segmental box girder in detail. Precast segmental box girder, SBG in short, is one of the most interesting and complicated precast products to produce. For this project, about 260,000 cubic meters of high-strength, high-performance concrete and about 60,000 metric tons of steel reinforcement are required for the production of about 8,100 numbers of SBG within a period of less than 30 months. The weight of the SBG ranges from about 65 metric tons to about 100 metric tons. The project's required mode of delivery is by sea barge through direct loading of the SBG onto the sea barge at a purpose-built jetty. It is possible to produce a typical SBG on a daily basis for each set of mold. The whole production sequence and timing is planned for this to be achieved. One of the most important elements introduced to achieve this is by integrating a preformed reinforcement cage in the production process. Instead of having to tie the reinforcement in the SBG mold and waste valuable time, the reinforcements are tied and preformed in a jig. Upon completion, the preformed reinforcement cage is lifted out of the jig and stored next to the mold. A few numbers of the completed cage is stored to provide a buffer to ensure continuity in SBG production line processes, even in the event of disruption to the preformed reinforcement cage manufacturing. In the production of one complete span of the bridge, the first piece of SBG shall be produced first, and thereafter the second SBG produced is match cast to the first SBG produced earlier. The third SBG shall then be match cast to the second SBG produced, and this cycle is repeated until one complete span is produced. To start off, the overhead crane is used to move the mold table into position. The bogie is then used to adjust the mold table. The overhead crane is now used to drop in the conjugate mold table. The bogie is then moved to the position of the mold table and shall adjust the alignment and level of the mold table. The overhead crane shall now pick the movable bulkhead and move it into position. Both the side wing form is then closed and tied. The movable bulkhead is placed into position. The movable bulkhead is then adjusted and secured to the other part of the mold. The preformed reinforcement cage is then lifted into the mold and adjusted. The finger wagon, which carry the inner core mold, is then moved into position by using the winch system. The inner core mold is then opened up and unfolds into its final shape and is secured by means of hydraulic jacks and turnbuckle. With this, the mold setup is now completed and ready for concreting. The base slab of the SBG is concreted first, followed by both the web and subsequently the top slab. Upon the concrete achieving the required strength, the mold can then be stripped. The inner core mold shall be untied, folded and collapsed first. This is followed by the withdrawal of the finger wagon. The outer wing form then opens out. By using hydraulic jacks, the bogie shall move the conjugate base mold table together with the movable bulkhead out of the casted SBG. The movable bulkhead is then removed and the conjugate base mold is moved out of the position by using the winch system with the help of the bogie. By using the hydraulic jacks, the bogie shall draw the SBG out of the fixed bulkhead to demold from the fixed bulkhead face. By using the winch system, the whole base mold, bogie and the SBG are moved out of the mold and positioned at the conjugate segment location. This SBG segment shall now be called the conjugate segment. The overhead crane is then used to carry another mold table for the production of the next segment. One face of the conjugate segment shall be used as one of the mold face for the new SBG to be produced. This face of the conjugate segment shall be applied with bond breaker to prevent bonding from the fresh concrete of the new SBG to be produced. This process is called match casting, as during installation, a perfect match between these two segments can be achieved later. The bogey is used to adjust the conjugate segment to ensure that it is at the right position, and the super elevation, gradient and curvature of the girder requirement can be achieved by way of 3 planes of rotation adjustment on the mold table. Both the side wing form is then closed and tied. The preformed reinforcement cage is then lifted into the mold and adjusted. The finger wagon, which carries the inner core mold, is then moved into position by using the winch system. The inner core mold then opens up and unfolds into its final shape, and secured by means of hydraulic jacks and turnbuckle. With this, the mold setup is now completed and ready for concreting. The base slab of the SBG is concreted first, followed by both the web and subsequently the top slab. Upon the concrete achieving the required strength, the mold can then be stripped. The inner core mold shall be untied, folded and collapsed first. This is followed by the withdrawal of the finger wagon. The outer wing form is then opened out. By using hydraulic jacks, the bogey shall draw the conjugate SBG out of the newly casted SBG to the mold the match casting face. By using winch system, the whole base mold, the conjugate segment and the bogey are moved out of the factory. Straddle carriers shall be mobilized to move the SBG to the storage area.